Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about consciously creating the relationship you want, constructive conflict within your relationship, and remaining an individual while being in a relationship. But before we get into that, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
Oh, I think the thing that probably fueled me up the most this past week was our bike ride that we went for on Saturday.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and went for just a really nice bike ride, and the weather was perfect between all of the storms that we had here in Sydney the previous week. Yeah, so it was just really nice to get out and spend some time together and, yeah, a bit of exercise. It was really nice.
Go on a bit of an adventure.
Yeah, what about you? What fueled you up the most this week?
What fueled me up was doing a bit of spring cleaning.
Oh, yeah, we did that.
Yeah. So we kind of cleaned out our garage, and we had a bunch of stuff that had kind of migrated its way down to the garage before it left our premises. So we managed to clean all that out, and then set up a bit of a home gym as well in the garage, which was really nice. So we're probably one of the late adopters. I think a lot of people set up gyms over the last few months, but we've decided to do that now, and yeah, created a really nice space for ourselves.
Yeah, I think there's lots of people who have adjusted their fitness and healthy well-being kind of routines. I know,
definitely.
Yeah, mine looks nothing like what it looked like 18 months, 2 years ago.
No, completely different.
Completely different.
Yeah. But now, here's this week's guest.
Today we've got Daisy and Andrew joining us. Daisy Nguyen is an international best-selling author and holistic wellbeing mentor who has ignited breakthroughs for hundreds of high-achieving women and families by transforming their unconscious and dysfunctional cycles into optimum health, love, and happiness. This has included supporting children to resolve bullying, anxiety, and behavioural changes. Ultimately, the family unites into creating a healthy, joyful life and boldly living, thriving in a sustainable future. Andrew Ramsden is a transformational leadership and life coach with over 20 years of experience. He has guided thousands of leaders and individuals from around Australia to level up their career, business, relationship, and life. Andrew is known for taking complex and chaos and reducing it to just the critical steps needed to succeed. Welcome to the show, you two.
G'day.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Oh,
No worries.
we're excited for this conversation. What that bio doesn't say is that you are actually in a relationship together.
Oh, there is that.
Yeah. Hey, so Daisy, maybe we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your career and how you got interested in this work.
Yeah, so I actually started as a corporate accountant. And yeah, totally different, right? And about probably 6 years ago, I started my journey with personal development and healing. And at the time, my mom was really sick. And also I have a kick from the universe with my visa. So I decided to study something that I might like, which is natural medicines. Mm-hmm. And since I've been on that journey, I never came back to corporate. So I became a corporate dropout. And I just love the work I do now to change and transform people's life, especially families.
Amazing. And you've written a book. Tell us about the book.
Yes, so that is an amazing collective effort from women all around the world. So it's called Sacred Rebel Women Who Dare to Disrupt, and very, very excited that we hit international bestseller probably 2 months ago. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, I love it because it's my journey from being a fighter to lovers.
Oh, I love this.
Yeah.
And what about you, Andrew? Tell us a little bit about your career becoming a coach.
Yeah, well, look, first of all, I was a hands-on techie, and I always knew I had good ideas, but nobody would listen to me, as is often the case. Nobody still does, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of drew me towards leadership, where I thought, well, look, I can make a difference. And what I found was sort of wasn't enough to just be in positions of leadership and get promoted into those roles. There was a real art to it. There was a real art to being there and being able to influence others and lead them, take them on that journey. And it just became a bit of a passion for me when I really lent into it to try to get the best out of myself and those around me. And one thing led to another. And eventually I got to the stage where I realized what I wanted to do was to coach. I made that transition, started my own company in that space. And it's just been one long sort of personal development journey, you could say, because there's nothing like starting a business or starting a relationship to really test those boundaries, push you outside your comfort zone and force you to take those next steps in your own personal development. So
that's kind of the paradox of being promoted and that corporate kind of ladder, is that you could be technically brilliant and then you get promoted into a leadership or a management role and you're actually crap at leading people. You're technically brilliant but can't manage a team.
Yeah, and I was. So that was part of the journey. Yeah,
and it's often said that people get promoted one step above where they actually should be. It's because obviously.
Otherwise, they'd keep going.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's it.
That's it. Yeah. Absolutely. It was a bit of a transition then into the relationship space, and yet at the same time, it's all so closely related. And what I found was with my clients that they were coming to me with the pressures that they were facing in the workplace, but obviously the pressure doesn't stop when they walk out the door. And in fact, what was going on at home was often a great source of pressure for them. And when we could put the foundations in place at home, it then translated into every aspect of their life, including how they showed up as a leader and in their career.
Yeah, I love that you shared that. And that's a big premise of Fuel Collective and this idea of better relationships, creating a better world. Because if you do have a better relationship at home, you can show up in the rest of the world as a better leader, a better employer, a better bringer of ideas, a better innovator, and you can solve bigger problems when you aren't stuck solving these uncomfortable ones at home.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. And so much transferable skill that you could learn from your romantic relationship that you can apply to friendship, to relationship with colleagues, with your boss. It's changed everything.
So then the two of you together. So how long have you been in a romantic relationship together?
About 2 years now. About that. Yeah.
Tell us all about it. How did you meet?
So we actually met in a personal development workshop that our mentor, Robert Kirby, hosted 3.5 years ago. And then we became friends. And then gradually we found our spark and started dating.
That's the short version.
And what I understand is that COVID put a little bit of maybe express on the taking the next step.
We very much agreed to take it slow. We weren't going to rush into anything. And I came down here for one of the weekends of the program. I was staying with Daisy at the time, but unfortunately they closed the borders and they cancelled my flight home. And I've been down here ever since. So
ta-da! Instant live-in boyfriend.
Yeah.
So I was living in Brisbane up until that point, but now I'm a Sydneyite.
Yeah, beautiful. So tell us a little bit about, obviously you've met in an environment where personal development, you've pulled back some of the outer masks and you're in an environment where you're doing some, I'm going to guess, deep inner work. So this is an amazing place to start your friendship at. So I can only imagine that must have accelerated some of the conversations that maybe you had together in those early few days and then transitioning into a romantic relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm incredibly blessed, and I'm sure Daisy feels the same. Don't want to put words in her mouth, but I feel incredibly blessed to have someone who has that shared language, but also like a shared set of values really around continuous growth and learning as part of what we do. And it's really powerful to find someone that has also gone to that place of really examining what's going on inside them and owning their darkness, owning the parts of themselves and re-owning those parts of themselves that we often disown and say, oh, that's not me. And we just push that down and push it aside. And very, very deep and powerful place to start a relationship. Very challenging because we were past all the superficial stuff and dived pretty deep pretty quick. And we also had to find boundaries around that because you can't have constant personal development at home. That's just not healthy at all. It's too much.
Yeah. And it sucks the fun out of it, right? If you're always in the dark work and in the heavy stuff, it can be energetically draining to stay in that place.
Yeah, it's a very fine line to walk. And lots of my clients ask me a question of, how do you know if I find the one? How do you know? And I have a whole framework to help them distinguish between the right, Mr. Right, Mrs. Right, with people that maybe need more examinations. So I think
that... So you applying that framework to Andrew?
Always.
Yeah.
At least you know what the checklist looks like, Andrew.
Yeah.
He's passed.
A pass.
He's passed.
Yeah.
So we've heard the two of you talk a little bit about, both respectively actually, that about having a conscious relationship. What is that?
Yeah, it's certainly being aware that relationships are tough, in a word. To summarize it, relationships are not easy. I'm sure you're aware of this. There's always ups and downs. There's always going to be tension. This is the person that knows you the best. This is the person that gets to see the best of you, but also gets to see the worst of you. And going into that with eyes wide open, I think, is really important. And saying, well, look, if that's how it's going to be, how do we both get really good at managing that for ourselves? And then if we can manage that for ourselves, sometimes we can help the other person manage what they're going through as well. But not to the point where we're dependent on that from each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
we don't want to be in that codependent state.
And we also have a very clear boundary that we don't blame each other therapists. We have our own therapist and support system, and we're committed to support each other as partner, but remain that equality and equal dynamic in the relationships.
Yeah, very important.
So what would you say are the characteristics of a conscious relationship versus just a regular relationship?
Great questions. I think I would start with, first thing is for each partner to know that this relationship is one opportunity, an amazing, valuable opportunity for both partners to grow their consciousness. That's my take.
Yeah, it is. It can be an incredible growth opportunity because you are going to push each other's buttons, which means you're actually finding those things that you can then examine and work on more deeply. I think for us, we also talk about what relationships are traditionally like, and then we compare and contrast that with a more conscious relationship. So, for example, traditionally relationships start off with that beautiful honeymoon period. It's all about dating and getting to know each other and keeping it light, and that's good. You should have that as part of a relationship.
Yeah.
But at some point in time, it often switches into what we call the power struggle. And this is where it becomes about ego. It becomes about staying safe. It becomes about not getting hurt again, making sure that we're always right when it comes to conflict. And this dynamic can last for, a short period of time and things can collapse, or it can last for a long period of time. It can turn into the status quo for a relationship. So a conscious couple, as I say, is aware of that, eyes wide open going in, and then has the tools to say, we can handle this when it comes. We know how to fight well. And in fact, it's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is being able to have a good fight. And
I want to dig into that, but before I find out about your fights, I want to talk about that idea of being conscious and intentional, because I think it is, in a relationship, it is really easy to just fall into a pattern of either what you did in your last relationship or what you did or what you saw your parents do. And I think that's the differentiator of like being very conscious and intentional about choosing behaviors or patterns or ways of doing things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's different, but that you've actually made a choice that this is how we're going to do life, or this is how we're going to do this part of our relationship together, because it's near on infinitely unlikely that the person that you've chosen to do life with had the same upbringing or experience as you in all of the various aspects of doing life together, from money and food and shopping and running a household and keeping things ticking along. And it's very easy to fall into those default roles that you've seen play out on TV or wherever you've seen.
Yeah.
So I think I like that. Yeah. Conscious and intentionally choosing how you want your relationship to be.
Yeah. And I think there are so many like societal norms as well that do play into, well, like even subconsciously play into relationships. You might not be aware of the things that you're doing that, like fall in love,
move in together.
Yeah, move in together, get engaged, get married, have kids. Like even just that timeline itself, like it can be very subconscious, I guess, and just kind of drilled into us that that's what you do. But yeah, one of the big things for me about having a conscious relationship is actually assessing that and going, yes, that might be right for us, but it also might not be right for us, and making that conscious decision about how you want your life to look together.
Yeah, excellent.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Love it.
So have you been having those kind of, you're in the first few years, like are you having those big conversations or are you through that already?
I think we start from the get-go.
This was our very first conversation when we acknowledged that we had feelings for each other. I think the first thing I said is, well, look, Daisy, I'm very aware of your values in life. You value family. And in fact, at that point in time, I didn't want to have kids. And I said, look, this is clearly a deal breaker for you. We're not even going to kiss. We're not even going to hold hands. We're not even going to start this relationship because there's no point. We're not compatible. And we've been on a bit of a journey around that. What did you say?
So at that time, I just asked Andrew one question. I asked his permissions if I can have questions, and he said yes. And I say, I only ask you one question. Is that the decision that you don't want to have kids, is that from fear or is that from love? If it's from love, I'm totally open my hand and my heart, and we will keep being great friends together. And I wish you the best. But if it's from fear, I want to challenge it.
And you're still here together, here. I'm guessing.
So this has been a journey for me to say, well, look, there is certainly a passion that I have for a lot of things in my life that take a lot of time and energy. And there's always an opportunity cost. So to have children is a trade-off. That's time that I won't get to spend pursuing my vision or pursuing other passions. But there was definitely, to be fair, a whole range of fears around having children. And that really got me to think, well, look, this is your opportunity to face those fears and see what comes of it. See if you can shift to the other side. So I'm very happy to say that we have.
Amazing. Yeah. So you feel like there will be children in your future together?
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
It's even included in our vision. So we create a collective vision together as a team. And Andrew, his last name is Ramsden. So one of the picture in the vision was a family of Rams. Rams.
Oh, I like the visual.
Yeah.
So I think you raise a really important point around making sure you're on the same page, consciously aligned in what you're doing in terms of your vision for your life together, but also in terms of your core values. And it's something that we talk a lot about with our clients, is this idea of getting on the same page around core values, working out what are the deal breakers. Are we aligned? And you don't have to work that out on night one the way that we did. I wouldn't recommend it as the first conversation. I think it's really important to just enjoy the process of getting to know each other and not trying to force it to that really serious place really, really quickly. For most couples, that's going to be a better way to go.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe your environment had some influence there.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Daisy, I want to commend you or applaud you or just shine some light on that powerful question. Is this coming from love or is this coming from fear? And you could ask that not just about children, but about any big decision in life. Why do you want to start this business? Why do you want to stop this business? Why do you want to make this career jump? Why do you want to move states, house, whatever? Where is that decision coming from? I really like that question. It's really
powerful.
And would bring a lot of clarity if you're really honest with yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's a core values that we have with conscious relationship is we want to shed the light and clarity on whatever that we do or the decision that we make.
It also means that if the people in the conscious couple, if the individuals are really on board with a conscious process and facing their fears, then your core values don't have to be aligned right off the bat. You can leave that space to do what we've done. And it's worked the other way as well. There's been some core values of mine that Daisy said, yep, I can get on board with that. And you can come together over time before you make that decision. All right, this is us. We're hitched for life versus actually maybe this isn't right. And we'll have a conscious parting of ways, a conscious decoupling.
Conscious decoupling.
Yeah.
We get to thank Gwyneth Paltrow for that forever, I think.
Yeah.
But I think with the core values though too, like core values are your own values. And you're not going to share 100% of your values with your partner. Like it's just not going to be the case. And I think if it was the case, then
you're probably not attracted to each other in the first place.
Probably not. Your relationship is probably quite plain. So I think it's really about understanding which ones are kind of the deal breakers and which ones you can still do on your own or within your own personal relation or your own relationship with yourself. You can still hold that core value even if your partner doesn't.
Totally.
Excellent.
We talk about 3 different layers. You've got your core values in the middle. Outside that, you've got like your passions. These could be things you love to do. I love to go rock climbing and Daisy loves to spend time at the beach. But equally well...
You sound like us.
You're a climber, Nathan?
Yeah.
And I'm a beach.
Nice.
I spend all the time at the beach.
Now I know who I'm going to hang out with.
We can be friends.
Yeah.
But obviously we can choose to go and do that separately or we can compromise and do those things together. It's not at the core. It's not a deal breaker. And then on the outer layer, there's preferences. Like I prefer a different toothpaste brand than Daisy does. You know? Who cares, right?
Yeah.
So, it's about getting down to...
And you can have a separate tube each.
That's it.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
So, it's about working out, well, what is actually right at the core that is that deal breaker?
Yeah. And I really like what you mentioned it early on about not becoming a codependent relationship. And I think like even just using that analogy and the visual of the 3 different sort of circles or tiers of things that are really important and things that need to have some overlap and things that don't really matter. Like, the preference of what body wash you use, probably not a deal breaker. I really like that. So let's go back a little bit. We talked about conflict and having some tension moments. Tell us how does a conscious couple do conflict?
Yep. So the first step for conscious conflict is to know that conflict is inevitable. It's just a part of relationship. So there's no point avoiding it or trying to make it as a drama. It's normal practice. And also seeing it as through the eyes of conscious coupling is knowing that we can grow through it together and thrive as a couple. And in fact, that the research actually shows that we need conflict. Which institute research is that?
So you're probably familiar with the Gottman Institute and some of their relationship research. So amazing stuff. And they talk about having a 5-to-1 ratio between positive interactions to negative interactions. Well, the research also shows that it can go too far. If you have a relationship that has 11 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction, those relationships don't last either. It's just too easy. There's no challenge. There's no growth. It's just boring.
Yeah.
So it turns out we actually need a bit of conflict in the relationship to come together and really make it work.
Yeah. I'm always a bit suspicious. Nathan and I used to say this, like, oh, we don't fight, like we don't have conflict. And I think we've evolved and grown past that. And I think that was probably a reflection of one or both of us not truly saying or asking for what we wanted or needed. And I think like when couples are like, oh, we never fight, we don't do that, like that just shows that someone in that relationship is, or maybe both of you are both being incredibly submissive and not playing full out. You're not really showing up in the whole relationship. Yeah, so that's really interesting. I didn't know about that sweet spot in the middle for conflict.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. And when one party doesn't do that, one of 2 things tends to happen. It means that one person has just given themselves away and they think, oh, I'm not smart enough, or the other person must know it all. And therefore the relationship kind of fizzles. There's no equality there. When there's no equality, there's no fire. And the other thing that can happen is the party that just pulls back ends up feeling resentful.
Yeah. And it looks like disengagement. It looks like, oh, they don't even care.
And don't be fooled that these resentment don't come back to you. It's like when you stockpile ammunitions, and one day when that partner feeling like they out of their limit, it will come straight back to you as a volcano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think of resentment as like dirty termites, like that they just eat away slowly of the foundation of what you've built, and it can still look amazing from the outside, but in reality, if you shook it could fall apart because resentment's just built up over time.
Great analogy.
I think it's really poisonous.
Yeah, it's corrosive in that way, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So is there any like top tips or things that you would recommend for having really, I guess, positive and conscious conflict?
We love a good fight. And in fact, for us, this came out of the fact that we used to fight a lot. We still fight, but we fight fair these days. We fight well. We've got a good process around that. And it was interesting because we spent so much time working on ourselves in personal development programs, one type or another, learning lots of tools and techniques. And yet when it came to a conflict, it all kind of goes out the window, right? The red mist descends.
Fight or flight is activated.
Yes.
Logic is gone.
Yeah. And I just have to win. I just have to be right. I have to defend my honor, or whatever it is that happens when we're in that state. The ego comes out and it's game on. And eventually we got to the point where we realized, look, we know better. Why is this happening? And we sat down and we thought through, well, what would it look like if we could get really good at this? What's the process we should be following? And let's try to apply that next time we get into an argument. And we built this whole framework, which we call the rules of engagement, which is a set of rules that we follow before, during, and after fights so that we can actually manage the emotions and the content of the argument, and it doesn't just escalate out of control.
All right, hit us with these rules. We need them.
Well, it ends up being a fair bit to digest, but I guess the short version is the main process we call shots fired. And when we do training, we tend to have a sound effect around that. I'm not even sure. Have we got a sound effect here? There we go. I don't know if you can hear that. So as soon as you've had shots fired, then there's a couple of different things you can do.
Yeah.
And often the best thing to do is to just call a timeout and say, okay, we've noticed that this is escalating out of control. That means one or both of us are triggered. When you're triggered, obviously, it's what you talked about, that fight, flight, or freeze mechanism has kicked in. Yeah. It means we've taken it personally. And what happens is when one person takes it personally, they'll say something nasty, or the tone changes, or it could even be just a look. And then it's very easy for the other person to take it personally. So if Daisy's triggered, it's very easy for me to then get triggered because she'll come at me. And once that happens, it escalates. So a timeout is then about saying, okay, go away and follow your stand down process, which is another process that we've got where you work through what's going on for you alone.
Yeah.
And this is how you avoid being each other's therapist. This is how you avoid that codependence where you need someone else to hold space for you to work through a problem. It's lovely to be able to do that for each other. And we do try to do that when we can. Like if I'm not triggered, I can hold space for Daisy. If she's not triggered, she can hold space for me. But it can't be something that you rely on in a relationship because it's too easy for both of you to be on fire at the same time.
Yeah, and that skill of being able to self-aware and then unpack, but also self-soothe in like, well, what on earth just happened there in my body, in my brain? What fear was activated? Why have I gone deep into scarcity? What is going on? I think that's such a valuable skill, something to work on and forever. I don't think that we ever get true mastery over it. But yeah, definitely that's something you want to learn how to do in isolation away from your partner.
Yeah. But I also like the conscious calling time out as well. Because I think what sometimes happens in a conflict is that people will shut down because they're trying to work through the stuff themselves and they'll go for a walk or they'll go somewhere else and not tell their partner what they're actually doing or not. It just looks like to their partner that they're abandoning them or they're running away or that they're leaving and don't actually care about the problem. Whereas I think that conscious calling of time out, it kind of signals to your partner that, yes, I am trying to process this. I just need some time to actually do that. Like, can you allow me the space to do that? So I think, that calling of the time out within your relationship is probably really important to kind of signal your intent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes with our clients, if like after the whole process, like workshop, if they only remember that point, calling time outs, most of the time they tell me back that they don't have a dramatic fight at all, just by calling time out and then being able to self-regulate themselves, like what Sam is saying. And we have very clear process for that.
Yeah,
So.
I really like the two of you had an emotionally sober conversation around how you want to do conflict, because I don't even think that we set the rules or the boundaries of what is okay and what's not okay when we are in a neutral state or a non-triggered state. And I think that can be really powerful in itself. It's just like, I won't tolerate you raising your voice or running away from me or whatever the triggering behaviors might be. And especially if like you've grown up in environments where your parents fought very differently, and there's so much to unpack there. But understanding what the rules are.
Yeah.
How are we going to do this?
There's a lot
because we're going to have to do it. So how do you want to do it?
Yeah. You talked about those things that kind of set you off. We call them the sparks. They're those things that tend to set you off, and it's different depending on your background. We won't sort of dive too deep into that. Then there's the escalations.
Yeah, I know one of mine is if someone raises their voice.
Right, there you go.
The voice, if like it moves from like, I think you can have like a passion and tone and heat in the, I guess, delivery, but if it escalates to like yelling, I'm done. I'm not engaging anymore.
Yeah.
I won't tolerate it.
So it's likely that you're becoming triggered at that point. That's a spark for you to become triggered. And then what tends to happen is we escalate. So there's a whole series of things that we do to escalate. This is essentially like fighting dirty, where we start pulling out that stockpiled ammunition, that resentment comes up, it's boiling over to the surface, or any number of other things that we do to bully the other person into admitting that I was right all along. And then we talk about essentially what's underneath it. The third part of the equation is what's it really about? Because when we get this upset about small things like the toothpaste or, whether we're going to the beach or we're going climbing, it's not about the beach. It's not about climbing. There's something deeper going on. And that's not a short conversation, but we have to be able to guide our clients through what are those things that usually come up for them, all that emotional baggage could be from past relationships, can even be from childhood conditioning.
Doing the post-mortem on some of our biggest conflicts have also been our biggest moments of growth. And I think it's not a comfortable thing to go in and be like, well, what happened there? Like, let's so the Olympics are on at the moment. Let's watch the replay. Like, what happened there? Like, where did that go wrong? Or what could we do differently next time? And what was that really about? But getting to a place where you can have that conversation about the conflict without getting back into conflict.
Yeah,
that's it.
Definitely.
So part of the time out for us is a commitment to come back and do a reconciliation. And a reconciliation sounds pretty easy on the surface, but ideally you're coming back and you're owning part of what went wrong. And as a rough rule of thumb, it's usually around 50%. You kind of want to own your 50% of what went wrong. It's not always that clear, but it's great if you can come back and own something and say, well, look, I was sparked by this. I escalated by raising my voice. And then, what was really going on for me was the way you said that reminded me of a past relationship, or the way you said that reminded me of my mother, or whatever is going on underneath that. If you can own that, it's incredibly healing for the other person to realize that you're willing to own your stuff and your part in it. And if it becomes a pattern, you might make a commitment to go and do some deeper work around that pattern.
It's really insightful. Hey, on a slightly more positive trajectory, I think all that stuff's really good, but it's shadow and dark. I would love to know, what are the practices that you've got in your own relationship that help keep it fueled up? What are the positive things that you do?
So one of the principles that we apply in our life, in our relationship, is we have me time and we time, us time. So Andrew has his own tree that he water and take care of every day. And I have my own tree that I take responsibility to nurture every day. And then we come together as a couple.
There's a third tree. I think one of the mistakes I've made in previous relationships, and we see this very commonly with clients, is one person will go and live in the other person's tree, and their own tree sort of withers and dies. So we make sure we maintain the 3 trees. Daisy's got her own, I've got mine, and there's one in the middle.
So what does that look like in practical application? Like, do you have a dedicated day or time where you take that time apart, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm quite rigid in terms of my scheduling. So we have a shared calendar that we put each time together there. And because, as we said before, Andrew loved climbing, but I love beach. And then Andrew doesn't like beach that much. So I have my soul sister and friends who we go for bush coastal walk like a couple of times a week. Yeah.
So we always make sure we've got time in the calendar for each other. It's not always easy because we work together in business. So we're with each other 24/7, especially during these lockdowns. I mean, do you like my lockdown do? I haven't had a haircut.
Out of control. I cut some yesterday. I was like, I have to fix up those ears and that bit that's growing down the back of your neck. That's got to go. Can't do the whole thing, but those bits that are showing that it's not just you growing out have to go.
I think we somehow need like Zoom haircut lessons or something like that. I don't know. There's got to be a solution.
I need to learn some technique from you.
Yeah, sign us up. We're in. We need that.
All right. Sorry, Andrew, I cut you off.
No, not at all. So yeah, we have to be very careful because a lot of the time that we spend together, we're busy working. It's a different kind of dynamic and a different kind of relationship. So we'll often put aside Sundays to just spend time together. And it could be watching movies. It could be going for some exercise, some officially state-sanctioned exercise, going for a bit of a walk. Or it could be, giving each other massages, things like that. So we make sure there's enough time in there to just be in that space where we're not constantly having to go.
I love that. If there's a tip or a resource or something that you encourage couples to grab onto and master in the early stages of their relationship, what would it be?
I think the first thing is to know who you are and to get to know the partner in terms of core values in the early stage of dating and relationship, is to get clear on that and having conversations, progressive conversations and open communications about that.
In a light and casual and fun way.
Yeah. So
especially in the early days.
Yeah. Don't ask him, when do you want to get married? When do you want to have the first child? And how many child you want to have? Which gender they are? Let's not go there. But maybe could start with some opening question like, what is your dream? What is your passions?
Yeah. Ask it in a more general sense. Is that what you're saying? I understand the big vision, but without being too targeted about marriage and kids.
I think of it as a process of like progressive, whatever you want to call it, progressive disclosure, progressive revelation. You don't necessarily need to grill them on the second date about exactly what their plans are for the future. Just when it comes up as relevant in conversation, you want to slip it in and otherwise keep it light. And I love what Daisy said about getting to know yourself. And I think getting to love yourself is really important as well. I think for many years, I kind of thought I loved myself. And in reality, I was actually in codependent relationships where I relied on the other person to fill me up. So that was a big shift that only happened for me in the last handful of years, was to give myself that space to work out, actually, there's a whole bunch of myself that I don't like and I'm disowning, that I just don't love. And when I'm in that state, how could I really love somebody else? So I think that's a really important journey when you're starting out, is to make sure you're able to love yourself and fill yourself up.
Yeah, huge premise of Date Forever. It's about dating yourself and the person that you've chosen to do life with. Yeah, I think, and we say it all the time, that the relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship that you have. Hey, this has been such an amazing chat. Thank you for letting us have a peek behind the curtains and getting to know a little bit more about your rules of engagement and frameworks. Really, Nate the engineer is like, I need to get my hands on that.
Process. Yeah.
But to say thank you for joining us, we want to make a contribution to Buy One, Give One. We know that the partnership for the United Nations Global Goals is really important to the two of you. And if a listener's not familiar with the United Nations Global Goals, they're 17 of the biggest problems that we need to solve between now and 2030. And Partnership for the Goals is really about amplifying and accelerating the targets for each of those. And Buy One, Give One is one of the vehicles that we can use to do that. So we've made a contribution on your behalf, which will greatly aid in the running of those B1G1 gives and allowing for more meaningful and effective giving towards projects that service those goals. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Amazing. Thank you.
No worries. So Andrew and Daisy, if we want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about what you do, how should they do that?
Yeah, we've put a special page together with some information on what we're doing and an offer for Date Forever listeners that's an exclusive. So
Amazing.
listeners can go to peakstate.me/dateforever and they can access it all through there. They can find out all about us and what we're up to. We're opening up a program in the very short future called Wholehearted Relationships, and we talk about the rules of engagement as part of that program. And we're going to put a special discount for Date Forever listeners on that page that they can access.
All right, fabulous. Thank you so much. That's really generous. And I'm sure that the two of you are going to go on to do amazing things, not just in your relationship, but on the ripple effects of other relationships too. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit with us.
Thank you for helping us today. Yeah, it was lovely.
Thanks, Sammy and Nathan. We really enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.